Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 16 quarterback starter sits for the 2019 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about all things at the quarterback position, starting off with the matchups at the quarterback position going into Week 16, then going over my top 16 quarterback rankings on the week. Before we begin, let me remind all of you, if you have not yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community, and if you have not yet already also, click that bell notification to stay up to date on my latest content. It lets you know when my latest live stream is up and when my latest content has been released. If you like today's video, also don't forget to click the like button. Thank you very much. Hey guys, how's it going? Hope everyone's doing well. If you haven't yet already, I already released a running back video earlier today. I'm doing 2 videos a day for the next 2 days. So I'll do quarterbacks, running backs today, as I've already done, and I'll do wide receivers and tight ends tomorrow because, I don't know, just a little bit different week. I'm kind of preparing for next week, the holiday week that is. For Week 17. I know there'll be a couple games there, but I'm trying to just kind of get into this motion. But regardless, we're talking about the quarterback position today, and there are some pretty fun rankings at hand. Before we begin talking about specific quarterbacks, again, if you want to hear a couple of the tidbits of news that I talked about, go over to the running back video. It is down in the description where the timestamps are. You can go and look at the news section. There wasn't too much news from today, but hopefully in the coming days, maybe we'll get a little bit more exposure as to some of these players and their injuries and whether they're going to go this week or not. But regardless, let's go ahead and talk about some matchups going into Week 16 at the quarterback position. Who gives up the most points to opposing quarterbacks on a weekly basis? Well, it's the Arizona Cardinals. Yet this past week, Baker Mayfield did not play, completely out of his mind. Even with as good of a matchup as it was, just Baker's not been able to get it done. Sure, he had a couple garbage time touchdowns to Ricky Seals-Jones and was able to figure that out and at least have himself a decent week in terms of like almost 250 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Wasn't able to completely fulfill his destiny there. Russell Wilson, on the other hand, this week will be able to take care of that. And I expect Russell Wilson to actually have a very good week here in Week 16. For those of you who, are Russell Wilson owners, you'll know earlier this season when he played against the Arizona Cardinals wasn't fantastic, wasn't great, but they don't really need him to be great at times against him. But as of late, just this past week, we saw him use Tyler Lockett finally. 9 targets, 8 receptions, scored himself a touchdown. The drought that we had seen for those couple weeks has finally ended. And hopefully we're going to continue to see more and more usage of Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, this passing offense, so that Russell Wilson can go ahead and carry you in this final week as a very good quarterback in this matchup. Moving on. Other guys that are in pretty favorable matchups. Phillip Rivers against the Raiders, but Phillip Rivers is a turnover machine. The guy cannot help himself. Despite all that he can do, the guy came out, he turned over the ball, threw 3 interceptions this past week. The last time he threw a bunch of interceptions was against the Raiders, in fact, back in Week 3. Threw 3 to them, 4 to the Kansas City Chiefs a couple weeks back. He's a turnover machine, and that's what he's become as of right now. Unfortunately, 18 total interceptions on the season, but again, could potentially take advantage of it. Not really feeling him as a streaming quarterback, though. Moving on to Miami Dolphins, we have Andy Dalton playing against them. Speaking of turning over the ball, Andy Dalton threw a handful of picks over to the New England Patriots defense this past weekend. Could be a decent play, but again, one of these quarterbacks that I'm just not trustworthy enough, or that are not trustworthy enough and have not done enough this season to make me believe that I can start them in my championship week. You know what I mean? Moving on. The Houston Texans. So Jameis Winston's been incredible. We'll go into a little bit more details on him, but in terms of putting up points, the last 2 weeks, he has been unstoppable. Despite all the turnovers, still a fantastic play and should be great this coming week. Moving on, we have the Detroit Lions matchup. Potentially Drew Lock. I mentioned him as a waiver wire pickup. Again, you're going to need to be in a 2 QB league to want to play one of these guys, like Dalton or Rivers or Drew Lock. But again, another good matchup. Then we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where Deshaun Watson will have his opportunity to score against them. Again, this is a guy that, as of right now, in terms of total touchdowns scored, he's up there with the best of them in terms of the quarterback position. As of right now, he has scored a total of 33 touchdowns, 26 through the air, 7 on the ground, which is absolutely fantastic. That is more than Jameis himself. So as of right now, a pretty good. Actually, no, they're tied for 33 apiece. Both these guys playing against one another. It's going to be a fun matchup. Obviously, a team like the Houston Texans, they're trying to clinch a playoff spot, while Tampa Bay is trying to play upset special and trying to close out a 5-game win streak and potentially finish the season with a 6-0 win streak. But either way, I think Deshaun Watson will be able to get it done this week. Moving on, we have Atlanta Falcons, Gardner Minshew. We'll see what he can do. The New York Giants, they'll have Dwayne Haskins playing against them. I don't know, Dwayne Haskins, is a good quarterback. He's progressing more and more as the weeks go on. But again, I'm not really looking to play a rookie quarterback this week. The Indianapolis Colts will have Will Grier, another one of these rookie quarterbacks, playing against them. And then the Cincinnati Bengals will have Ryan Fitzmagic playing against them. We've seen some of the tougher matchups, but the quarterback position is pretty simple. You are going to play one of the two studs that you have on roster. That is it. If you don't have two studs and you've got one, they're probably going to be on today's list, and they're probably going to be ranked at a pretty high position and a high enough one to confidently be able to play them, and they will produce this coming week because a lot of the matchups, despite them being perhaps more difficult, I still do believe that there is a very good opportunity where these quarterbacks do produce great weeks. So let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about the rankings this coming week. My top 16, starting off with my top 8 quarterbacks. These are guys that no matter what, I want to start. I know a lot of you I saw somebody type down in the comment section earlier, I think it was last week. No, it was for last week. He said, I started Ryan Tannehill because I overthought about it and I didn't play Lamar Jackson. It's like, listen, you have to play Lamar Jackson. He is the number one quarterback and the MVP of the 2019 season for a reason. 40 total touchdowns already this season. Gets to play against a fairly, weak defense in the Cleveland Browns this coming week. Lamar Jackson, last time he played against the Cleveland Browns, they lost, in fact. And he didn't have too hot of a game. But he will come back. I mean, when I say not too out of a gun, he still put up 30.48 fantasy points in a half PPR, but he threw interceptions, half PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown format, excuse me. He still threw interceptions, which is very unlike him. I mean, only 6 interceptions this season. He's very efficient. And as of right now, I expect Lamar Jackson to have a pop-off week once again. He is my number one. He is the number one in the NFL for a reason. Almost has comparatively to Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson, right? 2 running quarterbacks and 2 of the top, they are literally the top 2 quarterbacks in 6 point per passing touchdown leagues. Lamar Jackson nearly has over 100 points more than Deshaun Watson. That's mainly because of the fact that he has nearly, 700 more rushing yards. But again, let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about the next quarterback that I wanted to mention. My number 2, Jameis Winston. I mentioned him earlier. He has a fantastic matchup against the Houston secondary, which is very, they've just been injury ruined pretty much. They lost a couple players in free agency, and then they cut a couple guys earlier in the season. They've been, riddled with injuries all over the defense, whether it's defensive line with J.J. Watt or linebackers, and then going off, they lost Clowney in the trade, and then their secondary has been weak. As a defense, they're not great. They played a little bit better this past week against a fairly good team, a playoff contending team with the Tennessee Titans, but with Jameis Winston at home, even with Jameis Winston, dealing with his thumb injury, he did not look bad. In fact, he's thrown 8 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks combined. Sure, Jameis Winston, every game is going to come out, and he's going to throw an interception to the other team just to get it out of the way. He needs to get it out of his system. He needs to flush the toxicity out of his system, and then he's ready to go. He scored, again, 40-plus points in 6 point per passing touchdown leagues in the last 2 weeks. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League as of late, and I expect him to be fantastic as a starting quarterback in the championship week against Houston. Moving on to Deshaun Watson, again, on the other side of this matchup, this is a guy that he himself has played better in the last couple of weeks. 2 touchdowns. Talking about this, he's had a total of, 2, 5, 8, 9, 10 touchdowns in the last 4 games. Not bad. 2.5 per game. I'm leaning probably towards that 3 touchdown base. Certainly. I think a solid 3 touchdowns is almost a given for Deshaun Watson. Whether it's through the air or on the ground, he's going to get it. Whether it's garbage time or early in the game. This Tampa Bay defense, sure, at times, has been causing some turnovers. They stopped the run, but Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, I don't think they're going to be able to stop a guy like Hopkins or Fuller, I might add. And then you have guys like Kenny Stills who are still making plays, catching 2 touchdowns this past week. I think Watson will be able to get it done. He threw a couple interceptions last week, but a lot of them were like tip passes that were bobbled up and, not really technically his fault. But again, I expect him to be really good this week. He's my number 3 quarterback. Moving on to number 4, Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, again, plays against the easiest matchup at the quarterback position. He was a lot better last week than he was, the 4 weeks prior. He finally has kind of found himself. He's been far more efficient, 20 for 26 passing. Obviously wasn't Drew Brees last night where he was 29 for 30. But again, he was efficient. He got it done. 0 turnovers, 2 touchdowns. I think Russell Wilson this coming week, as they're trying to lock in the number one spot in the NFC. They're going to kill the Arizona Cardinals. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. And I think he's going to be a great quarterback as finally we're seeing a little bit more usage of Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, especially down in the red zone where they really need to be used. All right, moving on. We have Drew Brees as my number 5 quarterback. Speaking of the legend himself and the passing efficiency that he proved on Monday Night Football against the Indianapolis Colts. I have never seen a quarterback, and I mean, let's be honest, nobody has seen a quarterback go 29 for 30 passing. 4 passing touchdowns. That's a perfect QBR. Yet his QBR rating wasn't perfect. I don't even understand it. He was absolutely insane last night. And that's 2 weeks in a row where Drew Brees has been incredible for the New Orleans Saints. This coming week gets to take on a team like the Tennessee Titans. Again, this is a team that is trying to continue to lock down wins. And really, they're not really slowing down. They're throwing the ball a consistent amount, a considerably high amount comparatively to last year. I mean, Drew Brees has since he's came back for actually all season long, he's yet to throw the ball less than 30 times in a singular game, which is pretty promising. The more he throws the ball, the more opportunities he'll get. In the last 5 weeks, has had 4 games of 3+ touchdowns. That 1 week against Atlanta was the only off week. Outside of that, has been really consistent in the last month plus against teams. And I think Tennessee's the next victim for the Saints offense and Drew Brees. Moving on, number 6, is Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes somehow managed to have one of his best performances and the best Kansas City performance I've seen in a long time, especially from Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, in a game in which they literally could not see. They were so good. It was unbelievable in my opinion. I was actually genuinely impressed with what they were capable of producing offensively, with Travis Kelce being so hyper efficient, catching majority of his targets, Tyreek Hill scoring 2 touchdowns in the passing game. Despite all of that, that's why you play your studs. That's why you play against, or that's why you play guys like Patrick Mahomes, no matter the circumstance. And this coming week does not change. Chicago's secondary is a pretty good secondary overall, but it doesn't matter as Patrick Mahomes is going to come to town and teach them a couple lessons here and there. Teach them why they probably should have taken Mahomes instead of Mitchell Trubisky a couple years back. So as of right now, Mahomes is another great play. Despite the matchup, not really too worried about it. I think he'll be a great play this week. He's my number 6 quarterback. Player studs. Moving on, number 7, Ryan Tannehill, a guy that, speaking of being a stud, has consistently been one for the last God knows how many weeks. You guys know it. It's hilarious that the 1 week I put him as my thumbnail last week, I forget to talk about him because I was so excited to talk about Drew Brees. But talking about Ryan Tannehill, we all know I talk about him every single week, and I call him a stud every single week because he's 2+ touchdowns guaranteed. The last couple of weeks has been 3 touchdowns. The last 4 games, he has scored 4, 2, 3, and 3. I mean, he's just scoring touchdowns up the wazoo. Sure, he'll turn over the ball every now and then, but it's not even a big deal. He is scoring points against New Orleans. In New Orleans, it's a tough matchup, that's for certain. But I'm expecting Ryan Tannehill to be up to the task at hand and for him to get it done. He's my number 7 quarterback on the week. All right, moving on to the last quarterback of the top 8, we have Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan has been kind of impressive in the last couple of weeks, guys. 2+ touchdowns each of the last 3 weeks. In fact, against a tough matchup this past week, was actually surprisingly good. I think it was more of the San Francisco 49ers giving him the opportunity and being bad overall, which kind of helped Matt Ryan somehow win. But again, it was pretty exciting to see him get Julio Jones back into it. And feeding the guy, when you throw the ball 39 times and 20 of those times are going to Julio Jones, that is something that I like to see. And I'd like to see that once again this coming week against Jacksonville. And I think you'll have a similar product or explosiveness from Julio and output. So I'm expecting Matt Ryan to be good against this Jacksonville Jaguars matchup, a defense that has been struggling heavily, that the Raiders personally kind of dominated for a majority of the game in the passing game with Darren Waller and Tyrell Williams, even on the ground. So I expect the entire Atlanta offense to be pretty good this week. That's why Matt Ryan sits at my number 8 spot. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about the last group of my quarterbacks for Week 16. This is maybe perhaps one of the times you'll watch a quarterback video from me this season because this is perhaps your championship week. So let's talk about the last group of quarterbacks here, starting off with my number 9, Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott still dealing with a fractured hand. I'm not sure exactly where that currently stands. He looked fine the other day, right? He was perfectly fine, still threw the ball, but they didn't need him to throw the ball. 49, 50 times. He threw the ball in 23 times, 15 completions, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. Got the job done, finished. But again, still has that sprained left hand. It's not fractured, is it? No, it's not fractured. It's just a sprained hand. But I don't know. Why did I hear something about fracture? Well, maybe it was somebody else that fractured their finger. Regardless, Dak Prescott should be good this week. I expect him to, again, because Zeke is getting so much work in the running game and how effective he has been, they're going to run the ball. They're going to try to be as conservative as possible in that kind of sense. But when we have seen Dak Prescott be good, it's been against really poor secondaries. And what we saw last year with Amari Cooper having that hat trick in terms of receiving touchdowns against the Eagles last season with that 40+ point game, I mean, something similar to that could be coming this coming week. And I think Dak Prescott, a very good quarterback and another guy that you should be starting if you have him on roster and you don't have one of the other guys that are better than him, in my opinion. Moving on, we have number 10, Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers will take on the Minnesota Vikings, a secondary that has been struggling quite some bit in the last couple of weeks. And I think, Aaron Rodgers, sure, his production in terms of points, not there. He will either put up one touchdown on a consistent basis or sometimes have that huge pop-off game. And I think perhaps this is the week to have that pop-off game. Sure, the Minnesota Vikings, they stop, average quarterbacks. They'll let, Phillip Rivers throw interceptions and David Blau throw interceptions. But, Russell Wilson had a pretty good game against them. Dak Prescott, pretty good against them. Matthew Stafford, fantastic against them. There are times this season where the Minnesota Vikings have struggled defensively, and I think Aaron Rodgers will be able to expose them this coming week. Many of you may be thinking, there's no way that I'm going to play Aaron Rodgers. He's been far too inconsistent for me to trust. That's perfectly fine. In that specific circumstance, you don't have to play him. I'm just particularly excited about the matchup, and I think he'll be okay this week. It could be a higher scoring event, to be honest, as well. Moving on. Speaking of that matchup, we have Kirk Cousins as my number 11. Kirk Cousins this past week, sure, another one of these guys that's had a little bit quieter performances, but again, this was a very one-sided affair for the Minnesota Vikings. Their defense forced so many turnovers, making Melvin Gordon fumble twice, having Phillip Rivers throw 3 interceptions and fumble once. I mean, when you turn over the ball 7 or 6 times, you're not going to succeed. And it just led to a lot of defensive touchdowns for the Minnesota Vikings and having them just run the ball and kill the clock that way. But I think Kirk Cousins this coming week, he knows what's at stake. He's going to have to step up in the passing game, and I expect him to be far better this coming week against Green Bay. He's my number 11. Moving on to number 12, we have Ryan Fitzpatrick, whichever you want to call him. He is a garbage time king. Last week with Devontae Parker, got it done despite really being quiet for the first 3 quarters. Only had 1 touchdown passed, and it was really like the first 3.9 quarters. In the last couple minutes, he scored another touchdown. Cincinnati will be just as easy of a matchup, in my opinion. This is a guy that is going to throw 2+ touchdowns this coming week, and I expect him to be pretty good as he is the gunslinger, and he's going to get it done with his wide receiver core that is reasonably healthy this week. Moving on. Carson Wentz, my number 13. Carson Wentz scares me. Even though he's been really good in the last couple weeks, 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, the anxiety that kind of revolves around Carson Wentz is potentially the comeback. Is he going to be able to come back in a game that they start off slow in, or can they come out and fire away? I don't think this Eagles offense is good enough to where they automatically come out and start racking up points on this Dallas defense, but if in fact he can come back, put together, string together a great performance in this coming week's game, if he leaves his turnovers at the door before he walks into that stadium and does not turn over the ball, he could be a very good play and potentially be even better than the number 13 slot. But as of right now, I'm a little worried about it, so he'll be number 13. Moving on to number 14, Jimmy Garoppolo. Okay, it's kind of hard to explain, right? Because the logic of this doesn't make sense. But if my logic stands true, Jimmy Garoppolo is an every other week kind of player, which means every other week he's either good or bad. And the way it works is that in week 9 had a pop-off week, 10 terrible, 11 pop-off, 12 average, 13 terrible, 14 pop-off, 15 terrible. So the next, if this formula is going the right way, we're either going to get an average or a pop-off performance this coming week. Average meaning 2 touchdowns, 250 yards, or pop-off 4 touchdowns and absolutely kills the Rams. Last time he played against the Rams, didn't really have to use his arm to win. They ran the ball consistently. And this coming week, I do expect him to have to use his arm to win this game. Whether it's throwing the ball to only Kittle, I don't really care how it's going to get done. There's always a possibility that Jimmy Garoppolo has a pop-off week this week. It's just backed by just looking at the numbers. Obviously, it doesn't make sense, but I'm going to leave it at that because really sometimes the quarterback position doesn't have to make sense. Moving on. Number 15 is Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, even though he handed the ball off 4 times to Mr. Kenyon Drake for all those points, he still had a decent week. He still had 16.36 in a 6-point or in a 4-point per passing touchdown format because he can run the ball and because he has the opportunity to do that. And I think this coming week against Seattle, it's not going to be so much of a heavy run game, more as there's always a potential of a guy like Christian Kirk coming out and potentially putting up a pretty good performance, or maybe even Larry Fitzgerald, whatever it ends up being. I expect, a guy like Kyler Murray to be better this week. And I expect him to be a decent quarterback play in comparison to some of these other guys. He's my number 15. The last quarterback I wanted to mention on today's list, instead of going after an easy grab like you should play Derek Carr or Phillip Rivers or Gardner Minshew or, Drew Lock or one of these or Andy Dalton, I'm honestly suggesting Sam Darnold because I understand the Pittsburgh Steelers defense has been good this season and will score touchdowns and will cause turnovers and will do all of the above. They're a good defense, but I truly do believe with all my heart that Sam Darnold is going to put up another good performance of 2+ touchdowns. Sam Darnold is very good late in the season. He did it last year where he pretty much won games he had no business winning against very good teams in the fantasy football playoffs and had good performances. The performance from last week against Baltimore was pretty promising. Despite how much they struggled, the garbage time play of a Sam Darnold led me to believe that there's pretty much no defense that he's really scared of playing against. If you can go against the Baltimore Ravens and throw for over 200 and 2 touchdowns and have 19.82 fantasy points and 6-point per passing touchdown format, then you can go ahead and do that against the Pittsburgh Steelers because no defense in the NFL is completely unstoppable. And sure, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they probably, in my opinion, are best in their front 7, stopping the run and doing that. But at times, they have struggled and they can be taken advantage of. So I'm going to honestly suggest playing Sam Darnold because I think the dude is somehow going to get it done. And that is it. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I appreciate you guys spending your time watching today's video. Again, tomorrow, wide receivers and tight ends. We'll go over that tomorrow. Again, rankings are subject to change. My Patreon link is down in the description for those of you looking to get all of your 2019 fantasy football questions answered for this week and the rest of the month. Appreciate everybody for watching. And until next time, which will probably be tomorrow, I'll see you guys. Peace.